Hiya, my name's Charlie and welcome to my channel. And today, as you can tell from the title of the video, I am going to be doing the evolution of a reader, which is an original tag created by the wonderful Jack from Spread Book Joy. I'll go and check Jack's channel out in the description below. She's amazing. She's particularly passionate about reading about middle grade and YA, and she talks eloquently about books, and you should just all go and subscribe to her because she's like one of my Booktube favourites, and I just think she's like one of the most loveliest people. So yeah, go and check out Jack's channel. Thank you for tagging, and also thank you for tagging me, Jack. And so when I first heard of this tag, because like I am such a nerd, like most people when they hear of the word evolution, maybe the first words people think of are like Darwin and things like that. These are the people that are probably slightly a lot more intellectual than me. But when I hear evolution of anything, it makes me think of Pokemon. I have no idea why, and maybe like somewhere this is to do with my childhood or something wrong with me. This is me as a person. So every time I hear of this tag, I don't know why, Pokemon appear in my brain. So maybe like bookish Pokemon. Maybe there is some unknown bookish Pokemon that are bouncing around Booktube that I don't know about. So yeah, that's honestly what I think of when I hear this tag. But this is not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about my evolution as a reader and how I've grown and how I've changed, which is obviously a lovely topic to talk about. It's going to be a natty video, but lots of my videos are natty videos, so hopefully you will enjoy it. What you read, how has your taste in books evolved? So my bookish journey started obviously as a child, and I remember reading didn't always come naturally to me, and I was very impatient at trying to learn to read. This is what my mother tells me as well. And I remember like picking up books and really struggling. So the first books I remember actually managing to read were these series of books called the Puddlelane Books, which I've got one here because my lovely sister got a couple of them for my birthday, my 40th last year. And these are books based on television series. I think the television series, or maybe it came out sort of together. And it was like a magical lane where like with shops and things like that, and down it there was like magicians and witches and magical creatures, and it was just the most wonderful like land, and like it really captured my imagination. And I remember struggling to read them, but I remember these were the first books that I began with, other than Topsy and Tim, which lots of you guys would probably have heard of as well. So yeah, these were the first ones I remember enjoying reading and loving. Also, when I was younger, part of the other trouble I had was that I only really wanted to read non-fiction. This is what my mum always tells me, and I was just really like, my mum would have these big photo book, like these books with like big pictures of like wildlife and like other like animals and things, and insects and things, and I would always try and I would be interested in looking at those books because I was really into like animals and things when I was younger, and yeah, all of that. So those were the books that I was most drawn to, and I never wanted to read normal fiction. Yeah, so I have these big encyclopedias that I think my mum had a couple of. She didn't have loads of them. There were like a couple in our house that I was obsessed with, and so yeah, those were like books that. So I only ever really wanted to read non-fiction. I never was interested in reading fiction. I remember her having discussions with the teachers, and one of the problems was that I didn't want to pick up books about like children playing and things like that. So yeah, the Puddlelane books obviously were the first books that I was properly got into story-wise, but before then it was like I always wanted to read books about, obviously I couldn't read, but the books I was interested in was mostly non-fiction. Other books that I was really into were the Usbourne Spotter's Guides books. These are books with lists in of basically obviously like, so obviously a spotter's guide, so they would have little facts in them. So they'd have, so one of the ones like that I remember having, it was an Usbourne spotter's guide to like country walks, or for example, and so you'd have like a fact about the animal, and then obviously like a place to tick if you'd seen it. And yeah, I was obsessed with those books. I had like, obviously I didn't have loads, and we didn't have loads of money when I was younger or thing. So I didn't have loads and loads of them, but I think I remember having like maybe 4 or 5 of these books and ticking off. Like I had a zoo animal one especially, and I remember I remember going to Dudley Zoo. That's right. I remember going to Dudley Zoo as a child and having this zoo spotters book, this Usbourne Spotter's Guide, and going around the zoo and ticking off these animals. Yeah, I was obsessed with those books. If any of you had these Usbourne Spotter's Guides, if you're similar age to me, let me know in the comments below, because that would really make my day to talk to someone else about it. But yeah, as well as like the usual, like I remember the other books, childhood classics that I loved were The Tiger That Came to Tea, which was, I remember my teacher I think it was in juniors, I remember her reading it to us. And just like, that was a book that I really enjoyed. I don't think it's one we ever owned in our house, but it was one I enjoyed. And also the Bramley Hedge books were books that my mum got for us as a family, and she would read them as bedtime books to us. And then when we were big enough and could read, we would read them to ourselves. And they were books, I don't know if you guys know them, they're like beautifully illustrated and intricately drawn, like books of like the British, like these mice living in the British like countryside, and they were set in hedgerows, and they all had houses in like trees and things, and it was just so wonderful. And there's like a series of books set in spring, summer, autumn and winter, and because each of us, I've got 2 other sisters, and each of our birthdays were sort of set in different bits, so we each had a book. So my sister had one in the winter, my youngest sister had one in the winter, my eldest sister had one in the spring, and my book was autumn, because obviously I'm an autumn baby. Other books, so as I got a little bit older and grew a little bit more, the Roald Dahl books were massive favourites of mine, and I remember reading all of the ones that were published, apart from, I don't think, the Minpins. I think that's the only ones that I hadn't read of his, the children's books. And yeah, they were just favourites. And I remember the first time I read the BFG, and I read it, I completed it in like one whole day. And for me, as a young Charlie, that was like a big thing. So yeah, and they were just brilliant books. They were, I know obviously now they haven't probably aged as well necessarily, but yeah, I have fond memories of reading Roald Dahl as a child, and like the twits and laughing and being silly, and that was like a time when I really found joy in reading. So yeah, so that was my sort of teenage years. I think as I grew and when I was in secondary school, books that I remember in secondary school loving, I read the Point crime books. I remember Stuart from The Library Is Now Open mentioned them in their recent videos recently, which I'll try and find which one it was that they talked about them, and I'll link it in the description. Yeah, but yeah, I think they read the Point horror books, but I was a reader of Point crime, and I think maybe they could have been where I got my first love of like reading crime and reading crime, because I do think there were TV shows that were probably on there. I know like that had a lot of mystery elements to them and things, which I can't altogether remember, but I think they were the first like crime books that I read. Yeah, they were crime books, and they were quite fun. They were really fun, and they were quite fast paced. So, and I think they had eclectic different authors. I don't think they were written by one author particularly, but yeah. And then that was last Charlie, like in school Charlie, and then sort of as I was like more of an adult, I think I sort of did the romancy kind of things. And I remember reading, so Lisa Jewell, I know Lisa Jewell mostly writes crime, but when I was younger, she wrote these books called like Ralph's Party, and there were some like romancy kind of books, and I can't even remember, like maybe there was this Jemima J. I think I read Jemima J. Was that by Lisa Jewell? No, Jemima J was by Jane Green. So yeah, Jane Green was another author that I loved reading. I read all of Jane Green's books, I think, as a sort of either late teens or early 20s, I think. I don't know, did I read all of them? But I read quite a few. It was before it was like I wasn't reading as much as I do now, but I was still I was reading a lot more than I did sort of when I was like younger, if you know what I mean. Yeah, and then also another book was Come Together which was written by 2 authors, and it was told from 2 people's perspectives. It was by Emlyn, Rees and Josie. Who is that by? Josie Lloyd, I think it was. I'll put covers obviously across my lovely dragon friend. So that takes me up to sort of early 20s. I don't know, like, and then I do remember like reading, as before I came to Booktube, I think I remember, I wasn't reading loads, but I do remember reading Life of Pi. That was a book I read before I got into Booktube, and I really enjoyed that. That was a book, yeah. I don't even know how and why I picked it up, but yeah. And then I came to Booktube, and then all sorts of things happened, and I just sort of like, my reading just taste expanded, etc. But I will come to that in the next few questions. Right, it says, how do you read? How has the format of your read changed much? So yeah, since coming to Booktube, before Booktube, I only ever read physical books. I'd never read any ebooks or audiobooks before coming to Booktube, being honest. I don't think we didn't even have a library app that I was aware of before I came to Booktube. And then obviously, as soon as you join Booktube, you learn about all these other things, and people are talking about all these other things. I got an e-reader before I got my audio subscription, and yeah, and that was like I was so grateful for that. That was like a really good thing, and it was sort of because my I don't know if you guys know, I have Marfans, and my hands, sometimes I get really bad joints, and so sometimes I know lots of us readers have this anyway, holding a book for a long time hurts, and so having an e-reader, just when my hands are really bad, an e-reader is just so much more helpful, as are audiobooks obviously. The first audiobook that I remember listening to and completely being swept away by it was Michelle Obama's Becoming, and I got sent the physical copy by one of my lovely friends in America, Shireen. Becoming I got from Borrow Books, which is my library app, and it just made me fall in love with audiobooks. So, and since then I've kind of like consistently listened to audiobooks as well, and now, so proportionally my reading, the majority of books I read are physical books, then I would say in order of like amount it would be audiobooks, and then a smaller amount I read is books from my e-reader, which so yeah, that is how my reading is divided up, right? So, and that I would say largely is responsible because of Booktube, but it has, and also because of my body changing, and it's just so much easier. Like I said, audiobooks if you're tired, and if you struggle from migraines, or if your hands are hurting, and like same with the ebooks, they're so good for those things. Right, question number 3, how much do you read? Do you read more or less than previously? When do you read? How has your reading changed? So again, because of Booktube, I would say, so how much do I read? Right, so my evolution of this has actually changed even since I've started my channel. So my first time I started my channel was in 2018. Prior to Booktube, I would have said averagely in a year I would have read, say, 10 to 30 books. Whereas now, when I first joined Booktube, and then I think my first whole year of Booktube, I probably read more than 150 books. Whereas now, again, then I left Booktube, and my reading was still quite high. I would say it was still quite high, but it sort of lessened a bit. And then now I would say, again, since returning to Booktube, I've recalibrated and I read even less still. I feel like this year is obviously my reading has changed because obviously family issues and things, but aside from that, I think I've just learnt to kind of just chill a bit with my reading, and if I don't feel like reading, I don't read. If I don't stress out if I haven't read as much as I used to. So I think as you get older, you sort of learn obviously what's important to your own personal self, and I don't want to get stressed on how much I read, and if I have times, it does stress me if I don't read, don't get me wrong, it does stress me, but as I've spoken to you guys about in the past, but yeah, I think now I don't stress as much if I don't read. So I think now, like before, I would probably have read averagely, when I was on Booktube, I probably read maybe 20 to 30 books a month, whereas now I probably read maybe anything from like 7 to like 10 averagely, sometimes more, sometimes less. This month I've read a little bit more, but yeah. So there you go. It said about when do you read, how often do you read? So I always read first thing in the morning. I either put my audiobook on, because I just like to sort of sit when I've woken up in the morning. I cuddle my husband, and then when he's on his little tablet thing, I will sit for a little bit and probably either read a physical book for maybe half an hour or listen to an audiobook in the morning. And then in the evenings, I always try and read either before bed, or if my husband's playing computer games, I will often sit down and sit next to him and cuddle up and have a book. So yeah. And then if on quieter days, I sometimes read at lunchtimes. How has Booktube changed you as a reader? And as I had previously said, so Booktube, so the first time I joined Booktube, I kind of went so this is in 2018. I think I was like a sponge, and I literally took so much in, and it was just like, it's like a wonderful thing. Booktube is like the best thing. And I just took on everyone's recommendations. I wanted to join in all of the read-alongs, all of the things, everything. And I overdosed in it, and I, which isn't always bad, but I think I was going at it like 100 miles an hour. This is how I am. This is how I do things. Me as a Charlie, I've got quite an addictive personality, and I never do things kind of half-arsed. So I always kind of do things hell for leather. And the first time I joined, I definitely did that. But now, since I've come back onto Booktube this year, since May, obviously, like I said, I've grown up and I've changed a lot since then, because it was I'm 4 years older. This Charlie is 4 years older. So how I've changed is, I think, like I said, I'm just a bit more chilled about things. I still like to join in things, as you know, but I'm trying not to beat myself up over it when I don't try and beat myself up in terms of uploads. I don't try and beat myself up in terms of how much I read, when I read. Yeah, I'm just trying to be a lot bit more chilled about things. So yeah, Booktube has changed me as a reader, going back to the question, but I don't think negatively. I think it's opened up my reading taste. Beforehand, like I said, I still would try different things, but I definitely think it shows you more books to read. Booktube has changed me in a positive way, and I'm grateful for it. The community of Booktube is amazing, as everyone says, and yeah, I'm a better reader for it, but I'm a happy reader. So yeah, that's my answer to that. And number 5 is tag some people. So I'm going to tag Charlie from Charles Heathcote. If you want to do this, tag Charlie, please go ahead and do this. And then I don't know if you've been tagged in it already. And then I'm also going to tag Stuart from The Library's Open, because I mentioned Stuart's channel, and Stuart is wonderful, and I don't think they've done this tag yet. I'm also going to tag Mama Needs to Read Romance. Go and check out her channel. She is just the sweetest person. I just love her so much. She's so lovely, and you need to all go and subscribe to her channel. I also want to go and see her do this tag. So and also I would like to tag Alex from Alex Black's Reads. So those are the people I'm tagging. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambliness, and I am sending you guys lots of love. I've got some exciting videos coming up. Sunday I've got a video with Charlie coming up, which we filmed today, which is super exciting. And then we've got some announcements videos coming up in the next week or so, which is very, very exciting, for plans for the new year and also plans for December, which is very exciting. So yeah, stay tuned. What's the space? So yeah, take care, and sending you guys lots of love. Goodbye.